My mom thought she could replace my father with her creepy new boyfriend and make me call him Dad, but she didn't realize I still had contact with my actual dad. I was 13 when my mother got engaged to Travis. Dad had been convicted for manslaughter 5 months ago. He called someone at the bar, but he wasn't even drinking. I was there with him. He went into the bathroom, then came out minutes later looking panicked and covered in blood. He shouted for someone to call the police, and they arrived quickly, but then without saying much, they put him in handcuffs and took him away. The next time I saw him was behind bars. It never made much sense though. Dad never had a violent bone in his body. He swore he didn't do it. And the way Mom acted after his conviction made me even more suspicious. She brought home Travis instantly. On day 1 she said he was my new dad since the other one was clearly a monster, and told me that my dad was a killer who I needed to distance from for my own safety. I wasn't sure what to believe at first, but when 5 months later my mom announced to me that they were engaged and I needed to start calling Travis Daddy, I became quite convinced of Dad's innocence. Around this time is also when it started. Travis got comfortable. He began staring at me while eating slowly, saying things like, "You're growing up so fast, becoming such a pretty young woman." The worst part was my mom thought it was sweet. Even when I told my mom for the first time that Travis made my skin crawl, she told me I was dramatic. She must have told him what I said though, because that night while she slept, Travis came into my room, and he grabbed my wrist hard enough to leave marks and said, "You know what happens to naughty girls who snitch." I was terrified, but I knew I couldn't trust my mom by telling her, so I kept it a secret. I also started keeping a different secret around this time. I started writing letters to Dad. I'd hide them between my textbook pages and mail them from my friend's house after school. Dad would write back through the prison email system to an account I created without Mom knowing. Things got really bad one specific Thursday though. I came home from school one day to find out Mom had changed my last name on all school records to Travis's without telling me. "You'll thank me when you're older," she said. That night Travis came into my room to celebrate being a real family now and sat on my bed. He put his hand on my thigh and said I should be grateful to have a dad who cares. I pushed him off and locked myself in the bathroom until he left. I remember writing to Dad about that incident. The letter I got back from him was on real paper this time, and parts of it were damp and see-through, almost as if he had cried while writing it. That almost broke me. But luckily there was one thing I looked forward to, the chance to see him. His birthday was coming up, and I remember enthusiastically asking Mom if I could visit him. I told her I knew she didn't like him, but it was his birthday, just today and for a few minutes. "Please," I said. But of course I got told no. Actually, I got told something even worse. Mom said we couldn't go because that exact weekend Travis coincidentally had car show tickets and expected us all to go together. He specifically requested us to have adjoining hotel rooms. When I told him I'd rather visit Dad, Mom exploded. "He's a killer! You're not visiting a murderer!" When I said, "He's innocent and he's still my dad," Travis backhanded me across the face while Mom watched. She said nothing. I was forced to go with them that weekend, and while I was sleeping, the worst happened. Travis snuck in. He was drunk, and this time he didn't restrain himself to just a thigh grab. His hand went all the way. I had never felt so disgusting and humiliated. I remember traveling home broken. And to make matters even worse, the week we came home, my mom found the hidden letters from Dad I had been hiding. She burned them in the backyard. And as punishment for communicating with him, she took my bedroom door off its hinges for monitoring. Of course Travis took this as an opportunity. He would stand in the doorway at night watching me sleep. I remember that was a real breaking point of mine. I remember sneaking off into the school library past hours the next day to email JRL. I must have sent an hour-long email that made no sense because I just rambled about everything. I didn't know what I expected. If I even wanted anything because I was so numb. But then 2 weeks later, I got a reply from him. It was lengthy. Super lengthy. Telling me all the right things and how everything was going to be okay. But there was one thing that stuck out. "Did you check where?" I said. I became confused. Check where? I started going through every single email he had ever sent me. And that's when I found it. In one of the more recent emails, Dad had told me to go up to the attic and behind the radiator. I remember reading that email the day after asking my mom if I could go visit him. I think I was too heartbroken to read thoroughly and somehow missed it. Either way, I made a big-time mental note of what Dad said and waited until Mom and Travis went on date night. That happened next week. My hands shook climbing into the attic with a flashlight. And behind the radiator, I found a plastic-wrapped journal. I opened it to the marked page Dad told me to. It was dated weeks before Dad's arrest. And in Dad's handwriting it said, "It's been a few weeks since I caught Michelle and Travis sneaking off into the bar. I don't know how to confront her." I was shocked. Taken aback. And that's when I heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway that made my blood run cold. They were back early. The restaurant must have been too crowded. Or maybe they'd had a fight. I could hear car doors slamming and Mom's heels clicking on the walkway. My heart was thudding so hard I thought it might explode. I clutched that journal to my chest, leather cover pressed tight against my ribs, and knew I had maybe 5 seconds, tops, to figure out what to do. Then I heard it. Heavy footsteps on the stairs. Each creak of the old wood echoed like a warning. Travis. My hands were shaking so bad I nearly dropped the flashlight. Its beam wobbled all over the attic, cutting through the dust like smoke. I shoved the journal under my shirt, the cold leather sticking to my skin, and started crawling toward the attic opening. But I was too late. Travis's head popped up through the hole just as I reached the ladder. His eyes locked onto mine. No expression, just this dark, unreadable stare. And then he started climbing up. I backed into the wall without thinking, trying to make myself disappear. The journal was jammed against my stomach now, hidden, but barely. My back pressed against the attic's rough wood, and I could already feel a splinter digging into my shoulder. Travis pulled himself up all the way, ducking under a beam. His eyes swept over the attic slowly. The dust I'd kicked up, the boxes I'd moved, they told the whole story. He asked me what I was doing up there, voice calm but off, like a fuse about to blow. I said I was looking for my old stuffed animals. Something about not being able to sleep lately. I tried to sound casual, steady. He didn't buy it. I saw it in the way his eyes narrowed, in the way his jaw clenched. He stepped closer. I could smell the wine on his breath, cheap, bitter, and that cologne Mom swore was classy but always made me want to gag. "You're a terrible liar," he said. "Just like your father." That hit harder than I expected. Then he lunged and grabbed my arm, fingers clamping down like a vice. I winced, felt the bruises forming already. He yanked me toward the ladder, and I had to keep one hand pressed against my stomach to keep the journal from slipping out. Mom was waiting at the bottom. Arms crossed, foot tapping. She looked more annoyed than concerned. "What were you doing sneaking around?" she asked, like I was some kind of thief in my own house. Travis said I was hiding something. His grip didn't loosen. I saw something dark flicker across his face, something cold. He told her they should search my room. I panicked. I spit out the first lie I could think of, said I just wanted to find my teddy bear. Said I couldn't sleep without my door anymore, and it was making me feel like a baby. It was desperate. Stupid. But it worked. Mom rolled her eyes. She didn't want more drama. Probably figured I was just being emotional again. That night, I waited until they were both out cold, Travis with his gross rumbling snore, Mom breathing soft like always. Then I took the journal out and tucked it into my pillowcase. I could feel it against my cheek as I lay there, hard edges poking through the fabric. Couldn't read it yet. Travis kept checking on me. Every damn hour. His shadow would appear in the doorway, just standing there like some horror movie figure. Watching. Next morning was Saturday. Mom made pancakes like everything was perfect. She even hummed along with the radio, off-key and out of rhythm. Travis kept watching me. Across the table, every move I made, every bite I pretended to take, his eyes followed me. Like a hawk. I told them I needed the bathroom. Took the journal with me, wrapped it in a plastic bag I found under the sink, and hid it in the back of the toilet tank. The water was freezing, but I didn't care. Come Monday, I snuck into the computer lab during lunch. Told my friends I had a project. The room was empty except for the low hum of ancient PCs and that stupid ticking clock above the whiteboard. I took out my phone and started snapping pictures, page after page. My hands were still shaking, and some of the shots were blurry. but I got most of it. Dad's writing went back years. His handwriting started out neat, then got more frantic, more desperate. He wrote about Mom acting strange. How she'd come home smelling like smoke and cologne. He said he saw Travis's truck parked down the street at weird hours, like he was scoping the place out. One entry said he found a motel receipt in Mom's purse when he was just looking for gum. Another talked about Travis showing up at the bar where Dad worked, just sitting there, watching from the shadows. Never said a word. Just sat there. I uploaded all the photos to a cloud account I had made using a fake name. My heart pounded like mad watching the upload bar crawl across the screen. Then I deleted everything off my phone. Checked twice. I knew Travis might go through it. He'd been poking through my stuff more and more lately. When I got home that afternoon, he was already in my room. Just sitting there. Like he owned the place. My drawers were flipped out, clothes everywhere. My mattress was turned upside down, springs showing. Even my jewelry box was emptied, cheap plastic necklaces, old friendship bracelets, all in a tangled mess. He didn't even try to hide it. "Where is it?" he asked. His voice was low. Calm. That kind of calm that makes your stomach drop. I played dumb. Said I didn't know what he meant. He grabbed me by the shoulders and shook me hard enough that my teeth clicked. "You found something in that attic," he said. "Don't play dumb. I'm not stupid." Then the front door opened. Mom's keys jingled. She called out her usual, "Hello?" She walked in, saw the mess, and just blinked. Travis flipped the switch like always. Suddenly he was Mr. Helpful. "We're just reorganizing her room," he said, all cheerful. She wanted my help. He even smiled. That gross fake smile he always used on strangers. "And Mom?" She bought it. Again. Later that night, he made an announcement over dinner. Said the wedding was being moved up. Instead of next year, they'd do it next month. Said he couldn't wait anymore, had to make our family official. Mom practically squealed, clapping like a little kid. I sat there staring at my plate, the chicken looking gray and slimy all of a sudden. I couldn't eat a bite. The next few weeks were hell. Travis watched me like a hawk. He installed a camera in the hallway, pointed right at where my door used to be. The red light blinked at me all night like some demonic eye. He stopped letting me ride the bus. Started driving me to school and back. Said it was for safety. But we both knew the real reason. He wanted control. Full control. He'd sit in the car outside with the engine idling, watching like a hawk every time someone came up to talk to me. At night, he'd take my phone and leave it on his nightstand, way out of my reach. Still, I managed to keep working during the day. At school, I printed out pages from the journal and stashed them in my locker. I taped them behind old textbooks no one touched anymore. I knew I needed help. I just didn't know who I could safely turn to. My teachers didn't seem to notice a thing. And my friends? They wouldn't get it. They'd probably think I was being dramatic. That's when Uncle Ray came to mind. He was Dad's best friend back in the day, one of those guys who shows up with a wrench and a six-pack before you even ask for help. He and Dad were thick as thieves until the arrest. After that, Mom completely cut him off. Said he was bad news, that he encouraged Dad's temper. But I never believed her. Not for a second. Uncle Ray was the real deal. He smelled like sawdust and always had butterscotch candies tucked in his shirt pocket. Worked in construction, raised 3 kids, twin boys and a little girl who used to call me her big cousin. I found his number in an old address book Mom must have forgotten about. It was buried in the kitchen junk drawer, underneath a mountain of dead batteries and expired coupons. I called him from the payphone just outside the school gym during PE. The metal felt ice cold against my ear. I told my teacher I was feeling sick and needed some air, clutching my stomach like it was the truth. Uncle Ray picked up on the 3rd ring. The second he heard my name, his rough voice softened. I spoke fast, too fast, spilling everything in a jumble, telling him I was innocent and that I had proof. He told me to slow down, to take a breath. Then he told me to meet him at the public library the next day after school. If Mom asked, he said, he'd just tell her he saw me walking and offered a ride. His voice was calm, solid. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to hope. Travis didn't buy my story about a group project, though. He peppered me with questions: who was in the group, what the assignment was, which teacher gave it. But when he called the school to check, my history teacher, probably sick of being interrupted, backed me up. I practically sprinted to the library, my backpack thudding against my back with each step. Uncle Ray was already there, waiting in his old red pickup. The paint was faded, but the truck looked spotless. He looked older than I remembered, more gray in his beard, deeper creases around his eyes. I showed him photos of the journal entries on my phone, flipping through them quickly. His face darkened with every swipe, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the steering wheel. He said something had always seemed fishy about Dad's arrest. The official story just didn't add up, too many gaps, too convenient. He asked if I still had the journal. I told him where I hid it. He nodded like that was the smartest thing I could have done. He said we needed more than suspicions, we needed hard evidence. Witnesses. Something solid. He mentioned he knew folks who were working at the bar that night. Maybe someone saw something the cops ignored, or didn't care to ask. Over the next 2 weeks, I met Uncle Ray at the library 3 more times. Each time felt like something out of a spy movie, doubling back on my route, checking behind me. He managed to track down Marcus, the guy working security that night. Marcus was huge, but kind, one of those guys who doesn't forget a face. He remembered seeing Travis there that night, which was strange, considering Travis told the cops he'd been home watching TV the whole time. Marcus said Travis walked into the bathroom just before Dad, maybe 30 seconds before. But Marcus kept quiet back then. Said he was scared. Everything happened so fast after Dad got arrested, and Travis had friends in all the right, or wrong, places. He didn't want to get caught in the middle. Uncle Ray also found Tina, the bartender from that night. She had this wild red hair and a memory like a steel trap. She remembered Travis too. Said he'd been coming in for weeks, asking about Dad's shifts, acting all buddy-buddy. She thought it was weird but didn't think much of it. Folks ask about regulars all the time. That night, she said Travis ordered a whiskey neat and then disappeared for a while. She was the one who called 911 when it all went down, hands shaking so bad she could barely dial. The real breakthrough came when Uncle Ray talked to Jason, the bar manager. Jason was an older guy who'd been running that place for 2 decades. Turned out they'd updated their security system just a month before the whole thing happened. The cops had only taken the main footage, but there was a second camera, one that covered the hallway to the bathrooms. Jason still had that footage saved on an old hard drive, forgotten in a pile of liquor invoices. We watched it at his house. His living room smelled like stale cigarettes and fresh coffee. My stomach twisted as he plugged the drive into his laptop. We watched the footage roll. The timestamp showed Travis walking into the bathroom at 9:47 p.m., cool as can be, like he had all the time in the world. Dad came in at 9:52, probably just heading in to use the restroom after his shift. Then we saw Travis leave the bathroom at 9:51, checking his watch, smoothing his shirt like he just closed the deal. Dad came out at 9:53, drenched in blood, yelling for help, looking like he'd seen a ghost. It couldn't be clearer. Travis had a full 4 minutes alone in there. That was more than enough time to stage something or set up Dad. Uncle Ray copied the footage onto a bunch of USB drives, steady and careful like he was handling dynamite. He told me we had to play it smart. We couldn't just hand this over to the police. Travis might have friends in the department, people who owed him favors. We had to build a rock-solid case first. He told me to keep my head down at home, not to act any different. That part nearly broke me. But Travis must have picked up on something. Maybe I wasn't as smooth as I thought. Or maybe he was just the kind of guy who always expects betrayal. That's when he started getting rougher, more direct, more threatening. One night, he came into my room without warning and sat right on the edge of my bed. The mattress sank under his weight. From that spot, the hallway camera had no angle on him. It was like he knew exactly where to sit. He looked me dead in the eye and said he knew I'd been sneaking around with Uncle Ray. Said someone had seen us at the library. Probably one of his buddies. Those guys were everywhere, always watching. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "If you don't cut this little game out," he said, "your mom might get hurt." Just like that. Like he was talking about the weather. Calm as anything, he started listing off examples: People fall downstairs all the time, brakes fail, gas lines leak. It was all delivered with a casual shrug, but I heard him loud and clear. The threat hit me like a weight to the chest. I was scared out of my mind, but I tried to keep my face blank, breathing slow and steady. I told Uncle Ray at our next meeting, whispering the words even though we were alone. He nodded and said we had to move quicker. He'd already looped in Dad's old lawyer and shared what we'd found. The guy was intrigued, but cautious. He said having the original journal would make a huge difference, prove the photos were legit and hadn't been tampered with. I told them I'd get it, even though just thinking about it made me nauseous. That night, I waited until 3 a.m., watching the glowing red numbers on my alarm clock creep forward 1 minute at a time. When the coast felt clear, I slipped out of bed, bare feet quiet on the carpet. I padded to the bathroom and carefully pulled the journal out of the toilet tank, still wrapped in plastic. It was dry, protected, Dad's words intact. I tucked it into the inner pocket of my backpack and zipped it up. But as I stepped back into a hallway, there he was, Travis, just standing there like some damn ghost. "What are you doing up?" he asked, his eyes catching the faint light, sharp and suspicious. I clutched my stomach and said I wasn't feeling well. He stared at me for what felt like forever, then finally stepped aside. I walked back to my room, feeling his gaze drilling into my back the whole way. The next morning, my backpack was gone. I found it downstairs on the kitchen table, emptied out, everything laid out like an autopsy. Travis sat at the head of the table, flipping through the journal like he was reading some trashy novel. Mom stood behind him, pale and confused. Travis had told her I'd been writing twisted stories, said I was disturbed and obsessed with him. He said the journal was mine, that I was trying to imitate Dad's handwriting. "Look at this," he told her, pointing to random pages. "She's got us both in here, like she wants to break us up or something. This is her sick little fantasy." He just kept going, spinning his lies with just enough truth to make them sound possible. Mom's face changed, from confusion to shock to full-blown anger. She believed him. She looked at me like I was some kind of monster. Said she was ashamed of me. That she thought I was handling Dad's absence better than this. I tried to explain it was Dad's journal, that I'd just hidden it to protect the truth. But she wouldn't hear it. Said I was forging his handwriting to ruin Travis, because I couldn't accept him as my new father. She told me I needed help. Real help. Said she was looking into therapy. Then Travis chimed in, all fake concerned, suggesting his cousin ran a school for kids like me. Out of state. Remote. Strict. Perfect for troubled teens who make up dangerous stories, he said. The way he said it chilled me straight to the bone. Everything around me started to spin. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. That day at lunch, I found Uncle Ray's truck parked near the school and climbed in, sobbing as I told him everything. He rubbed my shoulder and said not to worry, we still had the security footage. That was something, at least. But when I got home that afternoon, my phone was gone. I checked my bag 3 times, but I knew it right away, Travis had taken it. He'd gone through everything, photos, notes, cloud backups. He cracked my password after just a few guesses. Then he sat me down and made me watch as he deleted every single image from my cloud account. His fingers jabbed at the screen like he was trying to hurt it. He said it didn't matter how many copies Uncle Ray had, without the original journal, none of the photos would hold up. Any lawyer worth their salt could say those images were fake, he said. Without the real thing, you've got nothing. The footage from the bar was a different story. That came from a verified source, with timestamps. But the journal photos? He said those could be dismissed in a heartbeat. That night, Mom sat me down and said I'd be leaving for boarding school on Monday. Some special place that could help me deal with my delusions about Travis. She'd already made the calls. They were expecting me. It was 1,000 miles away, up in the mountains. No phones allowed. No outside communication for 6 months, to help kids detox from harmful influences. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about helping me. This was Travis's way of getting rid of me, of burying the truth without burying a body. I knew I had to move fast. Saturday morning, while Mom was out buying groceries and Travis was in the shower, I made my move. I could hear the water running as I cracked the front door and slipped out. I ran straight to Ashley's place and used her landline to call Uncle Ray. Her mom was at work, and Ashley covered for me without asking too many questions. Bless her for that. I told Uncle Ray about the school, how they were planning to send me away. He told me to pack a bag and meet him at the library in an hour. But when I got back to the house, Travis was already there, sitting on the front steps, damp hair still clinging to his forehead. He knew. Before I could even speak, he grabbed me by the hair and dragged me inside. My scalp screamed in pain. Mom wasn't home yet. He slammed me against the wall so hard that a picture frame crashed to the ground, and then he barked that I'd ruined everything. Said he'd busted his ass for too long to let some spoiled kid blow up his plans. He claimed Dad belonged behind bars, said he'd been laying the groundwork for this long before that night at the bar ever happened. Travis went on about how easy it was to manipulate Mom, how she was so starved for attention once Dad picked up 2 jobs just to keep the mortgage paid. I needed to know the truth, so I asked him why he called that guy in the bathroom. I needed to hear him say it out loud. Travis just laughed, this nasty, bitter laugh that made my skin crawl. He said the guy just had the bad luck of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Travis had gone in there to stash a bloody knife, the one he'd swiped from our kitchen, the one with Dad's prints already on it. But the drunk guy caught him in the act, started asking questions, getting too curious. So Travis panicked. He used that same knife to shut the guy up, fast, brutal, and sloppy. Minutes later, Dad showed up, trying to help. And that's when it all clicked into place. The blood was still fresh, and when Dad tried to stop the bleeding, he ended up getting his prints all over everything. In the chaos, Travis slid the real murder weapon into his pocket and left behind a different knife, another one he'd planted ahead of time, one that couldn't be traced back to him. What Travis didn't know was that I'd been recording the whole thing. Ashley's phone was tucked in my pocket, already recording before I even stepped into the room. He didn't notice a thing, too caught up in bragging about how clever he'd been. Said he'd worn gloves, scoped out the bar's routine for weeks. And after Dad was locked away, marrying Mom just made financial sense to him. She had a solid life insurance policy through the hospital, and if something ever happened to her, I'd be worth even more in Social Security payouts. He talked about possible accidents, a crash, a fall, maybe an overdose. And that's when Mom walked in. She'd come home early, forgot her wallet, I think. She stood there, just outside the doorway, and heard every damn word Travis said. Her face went pale, paper white. The grocery bag slipped from her hands, oranges rolling across the floor. Travis spun around, his whole body stiffening once he realized she'd been listening. He scrambled, tried to cover his tracks. Said I'd just made him mad, claimed he didn't mean any of it, that he was just trying to scare me straight. But it was too late. Mom had heard enough. The wool finally pulled from her eyes. She backed up as he moved toward her, reaching behind with one hand. She told him to leave. He said she was blowing things out of proportion. But she grabbed a kitchen knife from the block and told him straight, "Get out, or she'd call the cops." Travis chuckled like she was bluffing, said she'd never go through with it. Too much embarrassment, too much gossip, what would the neighbors say? But her hand didn't shake. For the first time in a long while, I saw my real mom again, the one who used to chase off monsters under my bed and patch up my scraped knees. Travis saw it too. Something in her stare made him realize she wasn't bluffing. His face changed, the smugness drained away. He grabbed his wallet and keys from the counter. But before walking out, he looked her dead in the eye and said it wasn't over. Claimed he knew her secrets, about the affairs she'd had early in their marriage, about the money she snuck from Dad's savings to cover her shopping debts. If she ratted him out, he said, he'd burn her reputation to the ground. Then he stormed out, slamming the front door so hard the windows rattled and the last of the picture frames came crashing down. Mom dropped to the floor, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. I sat beside her and played back the recording from Ashley's phone. She listened to Travis's confession again, her expression collapsing more with each word. She kept repeating that she was sorry, that she'd been a fool, that she'd failed both me and Dad. I told her it was time, we had to call the police. But she was terrified. Scared of what Travis might do next, scared of what we could lose. So I called Uncle Ray. He showed up within minutes, bringing a USB drive with him that held the bar's security footage. We sat Mom down at the kitchen table and laid it all out for her. The screenshots of Travis's journal I'd saved, The footage of him at the bar, the notarized witness statements Uncle Ray had pulled together, it was all there. And when Mom saw it, when it hit her that she'd been sharing a bed with Dad's killer, she threw up right there in the kitchen. She'd been planning a wedding with a murderer. That's when she finally agreed. We called the police. 2 detectives came by to take our statements. They were serious, but gentle. Gave Mom tissues, spoke to me like I mattered. They played Travis's confession over and over. They watched the bar footage right there on my laptop. They collected the journal as evidence, handling it like it was made of glass. One of the detectives said they'd already had doubts about Dad's conviction. The forensics never fully lined up. But now, Travis's confession tied everything together. That same night, they issued a warrant for Travis's arrest. But he was gone. His apartment had been stripped clean. No sign of him. His car missing. The cops told us not to panic, they'd find him. They posted a patrol car outside our house, just in case. Mom and I didn't sleep. We pushed the couch against the front door, left all the lights on, and sat up in the living room, jumping at every little noise. By morning, Uncle Ray called. Said some of his buddies in construction spotted Travis at a cheap motel 2 towns over, trying to pay for a room in cash. Cops were already on their way. By lunchtime, they had him in cuffs. He tried to bolt, but he didn't get far. They found evidence in his car, proof linking him to the actual murder weapon. Turns out he'd kept it all this time, like a twisted trophy. The real knife was stashed in a lockbox in the trunk. The one from the crime scene was just for show, but the real blade still had the victim's blood in the grooves of the handle. Travis tried to deny everything. Said I used AI to fake the recording, claimed Mom was covering for me out of guilt over Dad. But the evidence stacked too high too fast. The bar footage showed him entering that bathroom. His prints were all over the real knife once they tested it right. And those weird inconsistencies in the wounds? They finally made sense. They matched Travis's height and build, not Dad's. Backed into a corner, Travis finally gave in. Took a plea deal and came clean. He admitted to it all, framing Dad, manipulating Mom, even confessed to crimes we hadn't known about. Things he'd done in other states. Other people he hurt. Other lives he ruined. The detective told us Travis was a serial predator, the kind who'd been slipping through cracks for years. He'd go from place to place, always looking for vulnerable women with kids, families he could burrow into and tear apart from the inside. Dad's lawyer wasted no time. He filed for an emergency appeal using all the new evidence. The judge didn't hesitate. After reviewing everything, he ordered Dad's immediate release. 8 months. That's how long Dad spent locked up for something he didn't do. Mom and I drove out to the prison to get him. The whole ride there, neither of us said a word. The radio played some old soft rock station in the background, but even that felt too loud. Mom kept crying quietly, trying to keep it together with a wad of tissues clenched in one hand. I didn't know what to say. My chest felt too tight to get any words out. When those gates finally opened and Dad stepped out, he didn't look like the man I remembered. He seemed smaller somehow, thinner, grayer, like time had worn him down. But then his eyes found mine, and they lit up like I'd brought the sun with me. I ran to him. Threw my arms around him and held on like I'd never let go again. He smelled like institutional soap and something I couldn't quite name, loneliness maybe. But he was still Dad. He hugged me like he needed it to breathe. His voice cracked as he whispered in my ear that he'd miss me every single day, and that he always believed I'd find the truth. Mom stayed back, wringing her hands. Dad looked at her for a long second, just looked, then said they'd talk later. Right now, he just wanted to go home. The drive back was just as quiet. He asked a few soft questions. How school was going. If I'd grown taller. Whether my favorite pizza place was still open. Dad stuff. The kind of small talk that meant everything because it was him saying it. When we pulled up to the house, he just stood in the doorway for a minute, like he was trying to take it all in, make sure it was real. The place looked different without Travis's junk cluttering up the corners. Mom had tossed out anything he'd touched, which left weird little gaps all over, empty spaces on the walls, shelves missing books, rooms missing furniture. Dad walked through the house slowly, touching things like they might vanish. He picked up photos Mom hadn't gotten around to replacing yet. I could tell each one hit him differently. That first night was weird. Tense. Dad chose to sleep on the couch even after Mom said he could take the bed. I think it wasn't about the bed, though. It was about not knowing where he fit anymore. I heard him moving around at 3 in the morning. Found him in the kitchen making coffee, hands shaking as he poured. I sat with him, both of us in silence, until he finally looked at me and asked if I was really okay. I told him everything. All of it. He didn't interrupt. Just sat there listening, jaw clenched tighter with every word. When I finished, he said he was sorry. Said he should have protected me. I told him it wasn't his fault. And it wasn't. The days that followed were a blur of paperwork and meetings. His lawyer pushed to have his record not just overturned but completely cleared. There was talk of financial compensation, but Dad didn't care. He just wanted his name, and his life, back. Mom kept trying to talk to him, trailing behind like a ghost. But Dad wasn't ready. His answers were short, and he always found a reason to leave the room. Travis's trial was scheduled for 6 months out. The prosecutor said his confession, plus everything we had, would likely mean life without parole. Turns out he was tied to 3 other murders in different states. Same pattern every time. He'd frame someone close to the victim, then slip into their lives like a savior. The detective said we were lucky. Most of his victims hadn't survived long enough to speak. I went back to school, but nothing felt the same. People whispered when I passed. Everyone knew. Travis. My dad. The trial. Our whole mess of a story had made the rounds. Ashley stuck with me, though. So did a couple others, the ones who mattered. Teachers were overly kind, but that just made me feel worse. I didn't want to be pitted. I just wanted to feel normal again. But that version of life? It was gone for good. Dad started working construction with Uncle Ray. He said the physical work helped quiet his head. He'd come home worn out and sore, but he smiled more. He also started seeing a therapist, some guy who specialized in people who'd been wrongfully convicted. Dad never talked much about the sessions, but I could tell they were working. He didn't flinch at every loud noise anymore. He stopped checking the locks 5 times before bed. 2 weeks after Dad came home, Mom moved out. She found a small place across town and said she needed space to figure herself out. Honestly, it was a relief. Every time she and Dad were in the same room, the air felt like it could crack. She'd betrayed him in the deepest way, even if Travis manipulated her. Some wounds just don't heal. She asked if I wanted to stay with her sometimes. I told her no. I needed to be with Dad. The divorce papers came a few weeks later. Dad didn't even read them, just signed and handed them back. He didn't want a fight. He just wanted it over. Mom gave him everything, the house, the car, custody of me. I think guilt was eating her alive. She started therapy too, trying to unpack how she'd let someone like Travis into our lives. Some days I felt bad for her. But then I'd remember how she picked him over Dad. How she looked me in the eye and didn't believe me. And just like that, the sympathy would vanish. Uncle Ray became a constant at our house. On weekends he'd bring his kids, Elijah and John, his 8-year-old twins, who didn't care about our history. They just liked tossing footballs in the yard and hearing Dad's dumb jokes. His daughter Deborah was my age. We got close fast. She got it, what it felt like when your whole family imploded. Her mom had walked out when she was 10, so yeah, she understood. 3 months after Dad came home, I had to testify at Travis's pretrial hearing. The prosecutor said my testimony would shut down any insanity defense or claims of coercion. I wore the nicest thing I owned, a pale blue dress Dad had bought me for my birthday 2 years earlier. My hands shook as I raised them to swear I'd tell the truth. Travis sat at the defense table in a baggy orange jumpsuit. He looked smaller than I remembered. Like prison had shrunk him. He tried to meet my eyes. I didn't let him. I stared straight ahead, cleared my throat, and told them everything. I told them everything. The threats, the touching, the night at the hotel. When I got to the part about Dad's journal, my voice cracked, and then the tears came hard and fast. The judge called a recess. I couldn't talk through the sobs. Dad wasn't allowed in the courtroom, since he was a potential witness, but Uncle Ray sat in the gallery. He gave me a thumbs up, like a silent reminder, "You're strong. You've got this." Travis's lawyer tried to twist things, make me sound like a confused kid. He asked if maybe I'd misunderstood what Travis meant, that maybe it wasn't what I thought. But I didn't waver. I stuck to the truth, word for word, just as it happened. Then the prosecutor played the recording from Ashley's phone. Travis's face went pale. Like ash. That afternoon, his lawyer asked for a plea deal, 25 to life instead of life without parole. The prosecutor didn't even consider it. After the hearing, the press swarmed us outside the courthouse. Cameras flashing, microphones shoved in our faces, reporters shouting questions like we were some made-for-TV drama. How does it feel to see him in chains? Do you forgive him? Are you moving on? Dad stepped in front of me, shielding me as we pushed our way to Uncle Ray's truck. We didn't say a word. There was nothing to say. This wasn't a headline. It was our life. Not long after, letters started showing up. From Mom. Pages and pages of guilt, how she failed me, how she should have seen the truth, how she wished she could take it all back. I read the first couple. Then I stopped. Tossed the rest in the trash, unopened. Dad told me maybe one day I'd want to forgive her, not for her sake, but for mine. So I wouldn't carry the weight of her choices around with me. But I wasn't there. Maybe I'd never be. She'd chosen him. Chosen a monster over her own child. Over Dad. And some things you just don't come back from. Travis's trial was brutal. They brought in families from all over, people whose lives he'd wrecked. The prosecutor laid out the patterns, the methods, how he found grieving families, slid into their lives, and poisoned them from the inside. One woman from Arizona testified that she dated him after her husband died in a freak accident. Said she got a bad feeling and broke it off. Probably saved her own life. Another family from Nevada talked about their son, locked up for a murder that suddenly looked a lot like Dad's case. That case was being reopened. Dad testified on the third day. He wore his only suit, the one he'd kept from their wedding, though I never understood why. He talked about the night he found the body, about how everything spiraled. About being arrested in front of me. About missing my birthday. Writing me letters he knew I'd never read. His voice broke when he talked about the day I was born. How he'd promised to always protect me. How prison made him feel like he'd failed that promise. Travis took the stand on day 5. Against his lawyer's advice. He tried to twist the story, said the man in the hotel bathroom attacked him. But under cross-examination, it all unraveled. His lies contradicted each other. He got angry, snapped at the prosecutor. And the mask slipped. When they asked him what he planned to do to me and Mom next, he wouldn't answer. Even his own lawyer looked like he'd given up. The jury was out for 2 hours. Came back with a guilty verdict on everything: murder, conspiracy, fraud, attempted assault on a minor. And more. The judge sentenced him to life without parole. Multiple life sentences, one for each crime. Travis didn't flinch. Didn't look around. Just stared at the table like none of it mattered. But when they let him out, he looked at me one last time. And I looked back. Not with fear, not anymore. I wanted him to see I was still standing. That he didn't win. Afterward, Dad and I went to his favorite place, the little Mexican restaurant where they still had his photo on the wall from back when he was a regular. The owner hugged him, said the meal was on the house. We ate quietly, not needing to say much. We were tired. But also free. It was over. Really, finally over. A week later, Mom came to the house. Dad didn't let her in. Spoke to her through the screen door. She begged, crying, asking for another chance. Said she wanted family counseling. A fresh start. Dad said no. That ship had sailed. She'd made her choice. And now she had to live with it. I sat on the stairs, watching. I didn't feel anything. Not anger. Not sadness. Just nothing. Eventually, I started therapy too. With Dr. Cheryl. She specialized in trauma, knew how to untangle the mess in my head. She told me it wasn't my fault. That I was brave. Some days I believed her. Some days I didn't. But the nightmares faded. I stopped triple-checking the locks. I didn't flinch every time a man walked behind me. Little by little, I found my footing. Dad and I made new routines. Sunday breakfasts at the diner. Movie nights with takeout. He helped with homework, even when it was math and he had no clue. He came to every school event, cheered embarrassingly loud at my band concerts, even when I messed up every other note. We were building something again. Just the two of us. About 6 months after the trial, Dad started seeing someone. Tina, the bartender who testified, began dropping by. At first, just as a friend. Then more. She made Dad laugh. Real laughs. The kind he hadn't had in years. I liked her. She didn't try to be my mom. Just treated me like me. She brought Chinese food and we'd watch terrible movies, making fun of the cheesy acting and weird plot twists. Dad seemed lighter when she was around. Eventually, Mom stopped reaching out. I heard through Ashley's mom that she'd moved out of state, started over somewhere no one knew what had happened. Part of me hoped she'd find peace. The other part didn't really care. Mom had been so quick to believe him. So quick to move on, to replace Dad without a second thought. Maybe that's what Travis saw in her from the beginning, that vulnerability, that need to fill a space without looking too closely. Maybe that's why he picked our family. Because he knew he could break it. About a year after everything ended, the state gave Dad a settlement for the years he spent wrongfully imprisoned. It wasn't some huge amount, but enough to pay off the house and put money aside for college. He bought a new truck, took a trip to the mountains by himself, and, for the first time in a long time, he actually started living again. He didn't quit construction, though. Said he liked how straightforward it was. You either built something right or you didn't, no pretending, no excuses. No room for lies. That spring, I turned 15. Dad threw me this huge party, probably to make up for all the birthdays he'd missed. Uncle Ray and his whole crew came. Tina was there. Even a bunch of kids from schools showed up. We had a bounce house, which was ridiculous at our age, but nobody cared. Dad grilled burgers and told the most humiliating stories about me as a toddler. And for a few hours, it felt like what I imagine, normal, is supposed to feel like. A real party. A real family. That night, after everyone left, Dad and I picked up cups and plates from the yard. The moon was out. The crickets were loud. We didn't say much until he stopped, turned to me, and said, "Thank you. For believing in me. For not giving up." I told him I never had a doubt. I knew he wasn't capable of hurting anyone. He pulled me into a hug, held on tight, and said I'd saved his life. We both cried a little, but they were the kind of tears that do something. That wash something away. The good kind. Life moved forward. I made honor roll. Started dating a guy named Rory from my chemistry class. When Dad met him, he joked about cleaning his shotgun. Mostly joked. Tina moved in about a year later, bringing her cat, Mr. Whiskers, who immediately claimed Dad's favorite recliner like he paid the mortgage. Somehow, the three of us fit. A strange little family, held together by love and choice and shared scars. 2 years later, Travis died in prison. Heart attack, according to the letter. He was 43. I didn't feel anything. Just folded the paper, put it aside, and went back to finishing my homework. Dad asked if I was okay. And I was. I really was. Travis had been dead to me since the day the verdict came down. That letter was just the paperwork to make it official. Mom sent me a card for my 18th birthday. No message, just love, Mom in her handwriting. No return address. I didn't throw it away. I don't know why. I tucked it in my desk drawer with other things I didn't want to look at but wasn't quite ready to let go of either. Dad said maybe someday I'd want to find her. Make peace. Maybe he's right. Or maybe some bridges stay burned for a reason. Time will tell. I got into college on a full scholarship. I'm going to study criminal justice, maybe become a lawyer, maybe help other families who've been torn apart by lies and mistakes and silence. Dad cried at my graduation. Full-on tears in public, completely embarrassing. Tina took about 1 million photos. Uncle Ray's family cheered so loud I could hear them even after I crossed the stage. They were my real family. The ones who stayed. The ones who stood by us when it all came crashing down. The night before I left for school, Dad and I sat out on the porch swing, watching fireflies. The air was warm. The sky was clear. He turned to me and said, "I'm proud of you. You've become an incredible young woman." I told him I loved him. That he was the best dad anyone could have asked for. We didn't say much after that. We didn't need to. We'd survived the worst thing I could imagine. And we came out stronger. That was enough. Sometimes I look back and wonder, what if I hadn't found Dad's journal that night? What if Travis had gotten his way, sent me off, married Mom, buried the truth? What if Dad had died in prison thinking no one cared? But I did find it. I did speak up. And that's what matters. Sometimes all you can do is fight for the truth, even if your voice shakes, even if it feels like no one's listening. In our case, someone finally did.